so next. Oh, yes.
All right.
My number 4, and he may also show up in the Crushes episode, we will see, is Captain Planet.
He's a hero.
That's right. Gotta take pollution down to 0. And but Captain Planet was so ahead of his time. I was trying to get Kevin to find an episode of Captain Planet, which if anyone can find this episode, drop me a link, because it's where, I don't know if you've ever remembered this, but Captain Planet is made up of elements. And so these kids have power rings. There's earth, fire, wind, water, heart. And something happens in this episode where like he gets some of the powers punched out of him, or something gets like lost, and he's only left with earth and heart. So he's just like a brown Captain Planet.
He's normally like a bluish.
Blue and green. I'll have like imagery to show like he's all of the colors, and he has all of their, when all of their powers combine, I become Captain Planet. So all the elementals and heart, most of all, to combine all of these kids who came from all different continents to believe in, like, he's a blue guy. I look at it as symbolism, also like Osiris, Dr. Manhattan symbolism. So there's an overall Superman idealism in there in terms of being an earth warrior. Because when, in my interpretation of being a warrior goddess, and in speaking of what like that role is in being a wife goddess, Captain Planet is Earth's Gaia's guy. Like, he's her dude. Like, he's there to like protect the earth and women as extensions of that earth energy, by which like I, watching that as a kid, I was like, yeah, you could almost feel like you believe these things are real on some sort of level, right? So there must be some sort of force out there for good. And the idea of being a captain as well is something that's important, because a captain is a very specific type of leader versus being, you know, military leader, or like there's different types of leadership, but captain implies like ship, and what is the earth but a mothership? So it's that whole idea.
I grew up watching Captain Planet around, I would also watch this Vedic story from it's commonly known in Hinduism. It's the epic saga of the Mahabharata. And in it, and it's the story of Lord Krishna, who is often depicted as this in the same skin, the bluish skin tone, right?
The blue suit.
And so like all the avatars of Lord Vishnu, whenever they descend on Earth, it is to protect the Earth's consciousness, humanity in some way, or just the Earth goddess herself. So I would see Captain America, and to me it was a direct parallel in my child's mind to some of those themes. So yeah,
totally.
Like in Egyptian mythology, in so many cosmologies, you have the male warrior that shows up. And again, like they're generally, you know, like by the time Captain America shows up, I love the dialogues he had with Gaia.
Yeah.
They just have this banter on the side at the end, 2 minutes at the end of the episode, and it's adorable.
I wanted them to get together, but
they did not. Yeah, it's not that dynamic.
No, and that's exactly it, because it's like a mother kind of figure, but also like I like heroes that are a little cheeky too, and like a little bit of a smart ass, because it's more fun that way. I'm not as big into like the brooding. Like, it's hot for a little bit, but like, okay, come on. Okay, so that was my number 5, Captain Planet. 4, sorry. My number 4 is Captain Planet. Thank goodness for editing.
Speaking of captains.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I just clued in.
Speaking of captains, Aarti, why don't you tell us what your number 4 pick is?
So my number 4 influential pick, and this was a surprise to me, was actually Captain America. So I hated Captain America when I read the comics, mostly because I could not relate to the righteousness and the justice. And I was like, you know, like the boy in red, white, and blue, obviously not me, just like super unrelatable. So I spent like most of my life being like, why is this character even here? But when the MCU announced that they were doing it, I was like, okay, fine. And I remember watching the first Captain America. So this was the one, like the other Avengers aren't in it. And I loved it. And then when Winter Soldier, Civil War, that entire arc, it was so great. And I think that the reason was I was surprised. I was expecting to hate it. And I love that the MCU rendition of Captain America was like, they did the man out of time very well.
Yes.
So Steve Rogers, who's Captain America, is, I think this is true in the comics, he's a little bit like DC's Batman, where you can put him in a different space, in a different time, in a different dimensional reality. It does not matter where you put him. He is always himself. He will find the North Star of justice. He will do right by his team. He has these values. They're so crystal clear for him. They're also crystal clear for everyone who's working with him.
Yeah.
And so it's just, he is very easily who he is in any reality, right? So in 1940, he does his thing.
Yeah.
You bring him to the 2000s and he's still him. And there's all these little quips they make, right? They make fun of him because
he's really an old man, right?
Old. He's in his 90s. So he's like, says ma'am to people in the year 2000. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Or someone will swear and he'll be like, manners. There's ladies present because he's from 1940.
Gentleman.
Right? Like that, whatever, the chivalry that existed in that time. And they make fun of him and he takes it and he smiles and he learns, right? And these were all traits that I didn't have at the time.
I like that, like the little segue. Into looking up to a character.
Yeah, and like learning from it. And like in one of the Amazing Spider-Man comics, he's really famous for, this is I think around Civil War. It's a version of the Oscar Wilde quote, right?
Yes,
It doesn't matter what the politicians and the media say. If you know something to be true, your duty is to follow your conviction and plant yourself like a tree by the river of truth and tell the world, no, you move. And I remember reading The Amazing Spider-Man many, many years ago and being like, what a rigid comment, just in my teenage mind, not understanding it. And then when I heard it again, it's positioned in a different way in the movies. I realized, I think, what I was missing. I interpreted this as rigid, but I didn't understand that this character is like, his North Star is to have a conviction and follow through.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like a lot of the other characters, like Tony Stark is a really good example. So many convictions, doesn't really follow through on all of them. Right? That doesn't make him bad.
No. It's just his character.
It's just not,
Yeah.
But Captain America is like that aspect of the masculine that follows through.
Oh, it's like a code of honor.
It is a code of honor
Yeah.
thing. And it's dated and all of that, but it's this thing that doesn't actually go out of fashion. And it's relatable to someone who couldn't relate to the character for most of her life, right? That's my influence.
So it was the movie. Did you watch all the Captain America movies?
I did.
Okay. Yes. Did you have a favorite one? Or was it Civil War? That was more of your favorite Captain America version.
I actually I liked him. It's the thing is, in all of the films, his arc, right? Like when he fights with Tony Stark, that's Civil War. Yeah. But in the 40s, like it's more, he's in his era.
Yeah.
I think it's like a lighter dynamic when he's interacting with the Avengers because he's such a sore thumb, right? Like he's welcome. It's not that he isn't, but like,
it's funny, because Captain America, the reason why I first liked Captain America, he didn't make my top. But I like that quote still gives me like chills. Every time I hear it, if I watch it in the movie, if I read, I'm just like, oh my gosh, yes. Because it's just about like following what you know is right. And that's not easy. And it's like, if you can see someone like just do it, like, yes, okay. It's
Infinity
possible.
War's portal scene.
On your left.
For those who haven't seen it, like it's a battle scene where everyone, like Thor and Iron Man, like they're just bashed to the ground, and so is Captain America. I think his shield is cracked at some point.
Yeah.
And there's an army of bad guys, and he gets up and he's limping and he's injured, and he just tightens his, armor, and he's limping towards battle. And then the portals open, and all of the superheroes that were snapped away in Thanos' snap come back. Yeah. But he starts walking towards the enemy line before that. Like it's like a last man standing, right? And
Avengers! Assemble.
And like, he's not always right. So I think in the Avengers movie, you know, he's following Nick Fury's orders, because he's a soldier, he follows orders. And then Tony Stark is like, no, they're hiding something. And then they have this argument. Yeah. And he actually has a fight with Tony Stark, but then he goes and investigates. And then he's like,
wait a minute. They are hiding something.
They are hiding something. Right? So like, this is not like I have convictions and I will never question them. Like, he does his own. Like, he investigates. But his trust in his team is phenomenal. Right? So Civil War is heartbreaking because that's broken. But yeah, no, it was a lot of traits that I really missed, and I knew that were so underdeveloped in me at the time. So I was really appreciative of that.
It's like reaching into your own like masculine, like warrior self or captain self, and like, okay, these are like the values that I want you to have, like,
and develop them and like figure out how that's even possible to do. But one of the reasons like I love talking to you about this stuff is, for me, like, stories are an ingestible medicine, right? Like, I watch, even today, like, whatever it is that I watch, I like, you know, we love characters, we relate to them, all this juicy, beautiful stuff. And then there's characters maybe that we're attracted to because they have something that we, not essentially that we're missing, but they're able to hold their power really well. And I think that's attractive, right? So, you know, like, where can I do that?
Yeah.